gazing at him from out of the crowd with a smirk and a wink of its one yellow eye, was the same flat, horrible visage that had presented itself to him that time in the cemetery from behind the gravestone. And it was not only grinning, it was furtively showing him from under his robe the hilt of his own gold saber. Chapter 38. Before the guard house was a spacious square. Guard house man thana tarjuma mein tane. Kalan chowk kyun ji thana bud. Where no trading or gathering were allowed. उनकी तिजारत वगैरह और कारोबार का तो इजाज़त नहीं है except on Tuesdays. Mangal Bazar. When the illustrious grandee administered justice here in person. Tanadar Khoch Madunji, the Malay arm. Saza Jazamiyat. And meted out punishment to all the malefactors who had been apprehended during the week. The Rose Aftar Giramda Tamam Shira the line Magahois Kargda, It Kargda, De Chanchovira. That day happened to be a Tuesday. The grandee in his robe of state, with a new saber and a multitude of medals. He had had no little trouble renewing these after his memorable chest misadventure. The chest misadventure who gum gata kharab se chandreshna una wapas repair sat enthroned upon the judge's dais, the kursi qazi, under a silken canopy, twitching his moustache and gazing sternly upon the crowded square from the eminence of his judgment seat. He grimaced and snorted with distaste whenever the wind wafted up from the square a none too odoriferous whiff, in which two smells predominated. Those of sweat, arak, and garlic. The malefactor himself, Agabak, was below, or even lower than below, for he sat in a narrow, well-like hole. Whence only his shaven, fleshy head stuck out. This, for the visual edification of common herd, betokened the inaccessible grandeur of authority on the one hand and the infinite debasement of antiquity on the other. A guard stood over the hole, armed with a long-handled wooden knocker. Softened at its knocking end with rags. To prevent the malefactor, any mulzim, from daring to raise his impious glance upward to the shining countenance of his judge. Ki nazari palid zinagazabal judge sahib nafta na sarh ki bagat de SPASS. This was meant to tell the common herd, revada, bhidra, ira guftaniya, that the very contemplation of those in authority was of itself a great joy to which the unworthy were not admitted. Agabak had already received a couple of taps on the head. And now somewhat dazed, was staring dully at the ground with a blurred eye and bleary eye. On the steps of the wide, gently sloping staircase, between the grandee and the guilty one, the better to hear both, said the scribe. With their books, a little to one side, 2 paces away, stood the merchant, under the watchful eye of a special guard. The other guards, horsed and on foot, ringed off the judgment place against the press of the crowd with a double line. Yag line sora, yag line peda. Baini khalqu, itamasha. There was a flash of whips and a gleam of sabers brought down flatwise upon the heads and shoulders of the too eager and too curious. Khoja Nasreddin squeezed his way, as many a crowd, forward with great difficulty, only to find a whip flourished over his head, which, however, he managed to dodge. He stepped back to a place of safety behind a huge bearded fellow, whence he could see and hear everything without exposing himself to the glance of the illustrious grandee. And now explain, you who call yourself Agabek, the son of Murtaz, quoth the grandee, whence and how these jewels came to be in your possession of the farmer Muhammad Ali, from whom you claim to have received them in payment for irrigation water. Ki jawahirata maz Muhammad Ali yak deqan asta da chorak wa unji ini raqam da maamila mair marda da Muhammad Ali da marda bayan hui da na. And why did he pay you with jewels instead of money? He is poor, Agabek murmured in reply. Where could he have got so much money? Poor, sneered the grandee. Poor, yet he pays for the water for all the village. Poor, yet he pays with gold. And gems. Write down, he ordered the scribe. Write down that shameless, stupid lie, which shall serve as further evidence against him. It is not a lie, O illustrious Lord. Forgetting himself, Agabek was about to raise his head, but received a tap on it with a knocker and dropped his chin on the edge of the hole. Biting his tongue, the tap, albeit a softened one, amazed his reason. And he was rendered inarticulate for quite a time, being able only to maunder, roll up his eyes, spout foam, and drag his beard along the ground. At last he recovered his reason and power of speech. It is not a lie, he mumbled down into the hole. It is not a lie. As into a barrel. The said Muhammad Ali is really poor and has no money. As for the jewels, he found them under the roof of an apple tree in his orchard while he was digging around it. Silence! Wretched liar! Roared the grandee. His mustache is bristling. There is not a word of truth in your speeches. Found them under the roots of an apple tree? Indeed. Would you have me believe that gold and rubies grew in the ground like mushrooms? O wisest of judges, O lamp of justice, I am prepared to swear by the Quran. Swear by the Quran? You would lengthen the list of your villainies by blasphemy too? Write down that lie. Scribes, write it down so that we may pass to the next question. The scribes wrote it down. The grandee passed to the next question. If, as your previous words make clear, you really possessed a lucrative lake. For what reasons then did you quit it? And purpose to go to Egypt? Where is your lake? I bartered it. You bartered it for what? And with whom? I bartered it for the heir apparent of to the Egyptian throne. That is for an ass. I'm Crown Prince Wali Ahdi Sultanati Misr Mukhar Kesta, who is really a prince. I mean, for a prince in the form of an ass. What? Cried the grandee, jumping up. Say that again. Nay, do not dare to repeat it. La hawla wala. Dan khurban vigar. How dare you, before my face, compare in your mendacious speeches a royal person to a despicable donkey? That's it, Rasmugum. Agabek cried, overjoyed. A long-eared, hide-coated donkey. At last, he had been understood. The knocker forgotten, he looked up and out. The heavy blow that struck his head deprived him instantly of speech and silenced him. His gaze dimmed, reflecting the state of his reason, and a mist of insensibility screened from him the countenance of the grandee. A new crime, roared the grandee. He has bespattered a royal person with aspersions and has dared to do that in the presence of the authorities. Scribes, write that down in becoming allegorical terms, of course. There is no aspersion here whatsoever. The unfortunate man groaned from out of his hole. I was journeying to Egypt in order to receive the office of Wazir and guardian of the court treasury as a reward for returning to the prince his human shape. I met the prince whom evil spells had transformed into a long-eared one. Silence! Wretched, mendacious slanderer! Silence, I tell you! Thundered the grandee, rising from his cushions in the heat of his indignation. Verily, it is long since we have profaned our sight with the contemplation of so vicious and hardened a criminal. To the list of all his reeking villainies, he has added another, the false assumption of the high rank of Wazir, a rank to which we ourselves have only recently attained. Right, scribe, write it all down. First, theft, awal duzi. Secondly, outrageous conduct and violence indulged in today at the bazaar. Padamarim kada. Third, the casting of aspersions upon royalty. Seyum behtrami. Sahibane Sultanat. Fourth, imposture. The scribes fell to scratching away with their pens, and in that scratching, Agabak heard his fatal and irrevocable doom. In vain did he appeal. To the grandee's mercy, plead for justice, beg to be heard out. Chance bhi dekh dafa digam. The grandee was adamant, deaf, kar, to all his wretched and contemptible veils. He gazed out above the heads of the crowd, glassy-eyed and inexorable, as though contemplating in the heavenly heights the lamp of justice, whose lambent flame was visible to him alone. Agabak, horrified, helpless, exhausted, fell silent. Here, at last, the former magistrate understood through bitter experience how pure truth can sometimes be made to appear as an ill-intentioned lie in the eyes of a judge. Khochi ek dab judgment aaj de aaj amad. Kichtur masalan tur yami matlab ami ras ki tu bavar thaj naya. Kichtur inal ras magi utar bavar shnamaya. Te atasta khochi de chord rafta. And there was nothing he could do about it. There was no way of proving one's innocence. Kichtur sabit karne ki ma begunaim. How often Shikadar Muddat he himself had tried and sentenced innocent people to imprisonment, the Bandikhana Regda, simply because their truth had borne the outward semblance of a lie. Ki rasezu az bruam te drog malum musha. And now the hand of retribution had struck at him. The sentence was a very heavy one. Imprisonment for life in dungeons. Agabak groaned and tore out a toughness beard. The guards seized him and dragged him out of the hole and off to the dungeons. There he fell into the hands of Abdullah the 1.5. Abdullah Yakunim, who, giving the criminal a dozen lashes by way of a foretaste, یک درجه انشالله خوامتر بخاطر وارم اپ میزنم. handed him over to his assistant, the ferocious Afghan. After the usual kicks and punches, Agabek was sent rolling down the 40 steps into the stinking gloom. Chilzinata lol khordarayka chilata. قد لغزت خوب که خوب حساب شد جور کرد و یک لغزت لول خورده بور بچه من علی که بال نشنی دیگه ونجی گنده بویه مطلب بفهمین دیگه از اونچه بور نموشه دیگه چیکار میشه چیش میشه. From whence issued teeth gnashing howls, and there he remained forever. وتر فریاده از منی زبور مشد که دلار پاره کنه. Having received from Kismat that which had long been due to him. قسمت صاحب ورد بفتنی حق تمشه بفرما. Having received from Kismat that which had long been due to him for the evil which he had sowed in the world. Whatever is the kisht is the diraw. The court proceedings continued. The merchant asked for the restitution of his jewels. One could easily have found a quite lawful reason for seizing them as forfeited to the public treasury. All the more that no complaint against such an action was likely to find favor with the Khan. The jewels, however, belonged not so much to the merchant as to his lovely spouse, before whom the grandee felt guilty, for ever since the chest incident. He had avoided her, although she had twice sent to him an old woman with a message. Fearing to anger her still more, and knowing the ardor, the impetuosity of her nature, he decided for safety's sake to send her the jewels as a present, through the merchant in whose favor he was about to give judgment and close the case. Right, scribe, he said in a loud voice. Inasmuch as it has been established beyond doubt that the precious articles Isaman Khimiti mentioned above do truly belong to the merchant Rahim Bhai, son of Qadir, who has a shop in the money-changing row. But here his speech was impudently interrupted by a cry out of the crowd. Yak dad faryad az mane mardum. Protection and justice! The guards, with a ferocious snarl, made a dash at the crowd in the direction of the voice. Yak da faryad skara reshud. Kujay, the grandee choked on his own tongue. Never before had any of the common people dared to interrupt the course of his official deliberations. And danchi became the zaban to zed danchi the banman kibut jurat ki kada hi kara ke dan faryad kada de waqt judgment interrupt kada. Yet the law permitted and provided for such interruptions from without. یعنی از طرف خلق کس اعتراض بال کنه دمانی الله اجازه است. مطلب کس نکده دمزوی ایران شد. The grandee remembered that. Moreover, it suddenly occurred to him that some enemy of his یک دفعه فکر شما دیگو دشمن نمی حریفای درباری خونیه at court might have sent a spy here with the express purpose of provoking a violation of the law in order to be able therefore after to report it. یک دفعه گفت اگر یکو جاسوس این چریه که باشه که ما لا را در اپلای میکنم یا نه اگر گیر کرد که ما اجازه ندادم یکو نفر برای اعتراض خب ما را فوراً حریفه دیگه اونج نمیله مرا. He checked the zeal of the guards with imperious gestures. Speak! Who is there? Come forward! And was unutterably amazed to behold Khoja Nasreddin. Yes, soothsayer. Oi, Taviz, where have you been? We have ransacked every nook and cranny of the city searching for you. Tu kuja shudi tu? He would have been nearer the truth had he said, Agar uras maguft, searching for your head. The talashi sarastu, for such had been the real and sinister purpose of his search. But that, of course, he omitted mentioning. He did, however, make a secret sign to the guards, and they approached Khoja Nasreddin. Isharakat Purinur Bayrin. They approached Khoja Nasreddin stealthily from behind, feeling for the ropes which they always carried about with them under their robes. Ki Rasir Burkna bin Nazir Bandigna. Khoja Nasreddin saw all this, but preserved perfect calmness. The aram is there. For he possessed a strong and reliable shield against the grandee's nefarious designs. I salute you, O worthy Rahim Bhai. Salam alaikum. Khobastin Jancham Jora. He greeted the merchant. May Allah continue your prosperity. The merchant turned away, saying nothing. He had not forgotten the 10,000 tangas of his, which had passed into the pocket of that knave of a soothsayer. Where have you been? The grandee repeated his question. I quitted the town on matters of business. O illustrious Lord, now I have returned and just in time to offer here very important evidence aimed at the furtherance of justice. You desire to give evidence? What kind of evidence? Evidence concerning the jewels and their rightful, indisputable owners. Asli Malik is Nakia. The owner is known. He stands there before us, the grandee said, pointing to Rahim Bhai, who was beginning to fret. Apprehending yet another dirty trick on the part of the soothsayer. Therein lies an error. Answered Khoja Nasreddin. I know for certain that the most estimable Rahim Bhai is not the rightful owner of those jewels. Janabi Muhtaram Rahim Bhai Aslan Sahibi Asli Ziniya. They belong to another. Yes, Kastigaya. How is that? Shouted the money changer, the blood of anger swelling his veins. What do you mean? I am not the owner, eh? Who is the owner then? You? Not I, nor you, but a third person. What third person can there be? Bellowed the money changer. Why are all kinds of vagabonds and tramps admitted to the court? The grandee raised his hand, commanding silence. After a pause, he said, your riddles are out of place here, soothsayer. What do you mean? I know the owner of those jewels perfectly well, for I had occasion to see them with my own eyes. Long before today, upon the person of my acquaintance, he choked on the name of Arzi Bibi. For he dared not utter it in front of the merchant by reason of his uneasy conscience. Verily, you speak truth, Khoja Nasreddin replied. But before that, before my illustrious lord had seen those jewels, long before today, upon the person of his acquaintance, his close acquaintance, I should say, they belonged not to Rahim Bhai, as I have said, but to another person who was unlawfully and forcibly dispossessed of them by the said Rahim Bhai. The Zoras Girazu Girifta. It is a lie, shouted the merchant. A black, vile lie. That person is here now. Sahibi aslizi eneminja. Khoja Nasreddin continued, undismayed. Widow, Beba Khanum, come forth towards the dais. Show yourself to the high and power-invested judge. The widow came forth from among the crowd and stood beside Khoja Nasreddin. The grandee was dumbstruck. All this was so unexpected. This sudden appearance of soothsayer, his evidence, this widow. Meanwhile, agitation was kindled in the crowd. And stood, it had to be extinguished at once. Soothsayer! The grandee cried in a grim voice of wrath. I perceive in your words not save a mischievous intent to blacken with slander the fair name of the merchant Rahim Bhai. How can you know the truth? Where are your proofs? Wherefore must I believe you? Whence comes this woman? It is a lie, the money changers shrilled from below. It's all a lie and a cunning knavery designed to disturb the peace among the common populace. Inasmuch as we discern criminal intent in the words of the soothsayer, the grandee continued, making a sign to the scribes and then to the guards, who hastily drew forth the ropes from under their robes, and inasmuch as such cases are liable to. He was not given time to finish. Where are my proofs? How do I know? Exclaimed Khoja Nasreddin, taking a step forward. Sual Farmudin Janab, all this was revealed to me in my soothsaying. The veracity of which my illustrious Lord already knows. As does also the worthy merchant. I have not my magic book at hand, but I can do it without it. Giving the grandee no time to collect his wits, he worked his eyebrows up and down fearsomely and began to breathe hard, as if shouldering an enormous burden. Then, with a huge heave, he brought out in a sing-song, sepulchral voice, "Lo and behold, I see a chest and two sitting within it. What is that? Can my mental eye be deceiving me? O refulgent and magnificent one, vested with power, what wretched state is this? Where is thy robe of honor? Chapan mapan kidre. Thy medals and thy saber. He is neighborhood in the chest by the grande gasped, pale as dead despite the blazing heat. A crawling chill grunt ran up his body like the touch of a steel blade. The apparition of the court physician appeared before him, and the blood ran slow in his veins. A black chasm yawned at his very feet. Another minute, 2 more words, and he was ruined. Utterly irreparably ruined. Oh, cursed soothsayer! He had to be stopped at any price. It so happened, unfortunately, that the soothsayer himself ceased utterances. As though gazing deep behind the hidden veil. That 1 minute alone could save him. For the next would spell his doom. That much the grandee understood. Why did you not say at once, soothsayer, that the truth about these jewels was revealed to you by the divination? Exclaimed in a tone of friendly approach. You should have said so at once, and all this talk would have been avoided. Inasmuch as the veracity of your soothsaying is known to us and has been certified and established beyond all doubts, it is open to no questioning by whomsoever. I have other proofs too. Said Khoja Nasreddin. Let my illustrious lord glance at the crowd on his left hand. Ali Janab, the grandee glanced and froze in horror. Merciful Allah! Gazing at him from out of the crowd with a smirk and a wink of its one yellow eye was the same flat, horrible visage that had presented itself to him that time in the cemetery from behind the gravestone. And it was not only grinning, it was furtively showing him from under his robe the hilt of his own gold saber. The grandee's breath took some time to return to him. He had grown white, and his face seemed to have melted away, leaving only a pair of black mustaches. He could not tear his own eyes away from the frightful visage. He was brought to his senses by Khoja Nasreddin's voice. If need be, O illustrious Lord, further proofs can be submitted. Nay, these are quite enough, answered the grandee, coming out of his stupefaction. The case is now quite clear, and we proceed to our judgment. Khatam, qissa khalas, judgment. Some strange magnetic power drew his glance irresistibly towards the hideous face in the crowd. Succumbing to it, he stole a sidelong glance to the left and shuddered. the Farman. Khoja Nasreddin understood what was going on in his soul and gave the thief a secret sign to withdraw. That's तुम्हारा काम हो गया, जाओ. The thief disappeared. The grandee drew a breath of relief. Scribes, cross out all that you have written down concerning the jewels. Darbare jawahirat ar chikne vishtakin tamam shmitaukin. He commanded. Better still, tear those leaves. And begin anew. Start kinasar now. Right. Inasmuch as it has been established beyond a shadow of possible doubt, biduni shak sabit shuda, that the said precious articles belong to the widow woman. One sentence. Saadat, Khoja Nasreddin obligingly prompted. The widow woman by the name of Saadat, continued the grandee. The aforementioned jewels, according to the law and justice, are to be immediately restored to her. At this point, the money changer's voice rose in a wail. Yak faryad as money changer. What do you mean the jewels belong to me and not to any widow? He had been silent till then, as he had not been able to grasp what was going on. Albeit, he had sensed that it boded him no good. But the moment the jewels were mentioned, he became vociferous. What court is this? He shouted. Where is all that irrefutable evidence? I see none. This is another mischievous plot against me. Let at least one proof be submitted to me. Good people, he turned to the crowd. Do you hear? Do you see? An honest man is being robbed before your eyes. Good people, be witnesses. A hum arose in the crowd, who responded with jokes, laughter, and derisive exclamations. One little boy began to cry like a quail. Another barked. A third caterwauled, signs of unruliness. But Tamizi started. Unsufferable before the face of authority arose upon the square. Merchant Rahim Bhai, silence! Roared the grandee. You are inciting the people against the law and authority. The Shorish Mairi Mardama. I will not be silent, the merchant screamed beside himself. The jewels are mine. I paid money for them. The tumult and agitation on the square waxed high. Sarasada Balchut, something had to be done to quieten the merchant. But the grandee saw no means of doing so. The merchant had fallen into such a frenzy of rage that neither coaxing nor persuasion could bring him to his senses. At that, the grandee, to save himself, restored to an extreme measure. He made a sign to the guards with the head knocker. I shall go to the palace. Let the great Khan judge this case himself. The merchant shouted while the huge strapping guard crept stealthily behind him. Tanga! His victim, with his instrument raised aloft, let the great Khan see what kind of judges he has. Khan bayad bufama ki chirqam qaziara mansab ka dein ji, shouted the merchant, and these were the last words he uttered. The knocker came down upon his peta. A hand length of tongue shot out of his head. His eyes popped and rolled up. He went blue in the face, began to hiccup fast and loud, then reeled backwards and would have fallen had not the guard with the head knocker caught him in time. The other guards had meanwhile restored order among the crowd. Availing himself to the lull, the grandee announced judgment and gave the purse with the jewels to the widow with his own hands. Please, all this took place before the face of the merchant, but he no longer clamored and interrupted the course of justice. It is doubtful whether he saw anything either, because he looked upon the world from under his half-closed eyelids, with naught but the whites of his eyes, the pupils still being rolled up under his very forehead. Hiccups punctuated with snorts under his very forehead. Hiccups punctuated with snorts shook his fat body, and in such a plight he was sent home with an escort of 3 guards, of whom 2 dragged him along under the armpits, while the 3rd propelled him from behind. Not until he reached the wicket of his garden, and the guards, seating him in the roadway with his back popped up against the wall, had taken their departure. Did he come to his senses and stare about him with befogged, senseless eyes, understanding nothing? Where was the square? Where was the knave of a soothsayer? Had it all been a dream? How did it? Where was his leathern bag? He clapped his hand to his left side. The bag was gone. Filled with sand, it rested at the bottom of a nearby cistern, and the money from it now pleasantly burdened the pocket of the guards. The merchant sprang up. He staggered back, groaning, to the scene of judgment, his turban all askew, but there was no one there. The the grandee, the soothsayer, and the widow were all gone. The court session was over, and the crowd had disappeared. The square, flooded with hot sunshine, spread wide and empty before the gaze of the merchant, as if there had never been any crowd here at all, as if all that had happened here half an hour ago had been a dream, a vision that had faded. 2 men of the watch sauntered about lazily, while a 3rd, with legs wide apart, sat in the shade of the dais, rewrapping the rags around his head knocker. My bag! Howled the merchant. Where is my bag with money? He was answered with a loud guffaw and obscene swearing. He wants some more, cried the guard with a knocker. 1 dose is not enough for him. Just hold him a minute, will you? Hearing these words, the merchant at last understood what had befallen him and why he felt such a dull, throbbing pain at the back of his head. Robbers! Thieves! He howled and rushed off to the palace, followed by the guffaws and profanities of the guards. What happened to him thereafter, whether he succeeded in gaining admission to the palace and laying his complaint before the Khan, and how his new quarrel with the grandee ended, we know not. بعد از چیز کار شد اونجیو اپیل تنیست نتنیست قد گارانتی قصرا خلاص تنیست نتنیست مو خبر نداره. Nor do we know the further destinies of the other. و Hussain نفرم اصلا حوالش نداریم. The imprisoned Agabak. حضورم اصلا معلوم نیه. The passionate Arzi Bibi and the rest. از هیچ کدام از قصه معلوم نیه. With these lines they quit our book. इन्हीं सत्रों के साथ वो हमारे इस किताब में से खारिज किए जाते हैं. In which they found a place only in so far as they came in contact with Khoja Nasreddin. اون مخص جای داشت که بخاطر نصرالدین اونا قابل ذکر بود. حالا چون که اون قد نصرالدین لینک نداره مو قضویش لینک نداره. Shining with the reflected light of his unfading glory, the moment he parts with them, that light pales and dies. مگه وقتی نصرالدین نور شی از بریز نانم افته اونا در ترکی گم بشه خود مخود automatically. اگر در طرف شی بودی معلوم میدی. And all of them are plunged before our eyes into the gloom of non-being. معدوم مشن گم غیب. The rayless chasm of oblivion. در منی غفلت گم بشه. For they themselves, چون که خودون ازنا, by reason of their utter spiritual insignificance, از خاطر روحانی پستی, are incapable of leaving any mark in the world. اما ترا مایز خود خویج نشان اشتن نیه اونا. موشر بز نشان بیلی اونا. بکتاب خو. آخر. And so on his homeward way in Iraqan, Khoja Nasreddin rid himself of the numerous traveling companions, مسافرات قچی همراه بود, یک اینار خلاص کرد, whom fate had sent. تقدیر در رایزی ریک داد که تایی تو اینار بور خزی معامله کو دیگه. Had sent him upon his journey, upon this journey. None but the thief was with him now. Together, at early morn, they quitted the busy and noisy city of Kokand. The already awakened bazaar accompanied them a long way with its predatory roar and incessant stream of carts, caravans, and horsemen, passed them from all sides, from all the 9 gates of Kokand. Hastening today towards the mart, the new day promised the same as the day before. Blasphemous worship of gods of gain, deceit and cunning. و هر روز نه معامله شروع شد عبادت خداهای سود، فریب و مکر. Beyond the city, all was quiet. The gardens and orchards, which were still shady and moist, here reigned a deep shining peace, so hazily blue and sun-kissed as if it had just been born from the heavenly misty blue. It was here that Kokand said its farewell word to Khoja Nasreddin. Here, behind the low, dilapidated wall of a little garden, sweet children's voices rang out in song. Southern breeze, sweet as honey, and the cherry orchards wide. Day begins, benign and sunny, full of happiness and light. To the bluebird's merry whistle, to the thunder's happy boom, Torakhon, the kind old wizard, wakes from slumber in his tomb. Torakhon, the kind old wizard, wakes from slumber in his tomb. Khoja Nasreddin stopped his ass, dismounted, and made a respectful salam towards the garden wall. Balaibur. He was saluting Kokand, which had rewarded his good work with this song. They passed the last garden and came to low-lying land where rice fields gleamed in the sun with a white incandescence. The tomb of Father Torakhon was not far away from here. Khoja Nasreddin embraced the thief and said, "We part now. Right. Give my greetings to Torakhon. Torakhon salam. Birsanni. Pray him to give you strength. Dua ko ki quwwat ke paida karne for a continued life of virtue. Zindagi khair tu mingirne." There followed a tender leave-taking with a long-eared one. The thief kissed his nose and combed the little tuft on his tail for the last time with a wooden curry comb. "When shall I see you two again?" said the thief. "I do not know," said Khoja Nasreddin. "But remember, the world is open to you from end to end. As alif tayai dunya ra famidi, as it is to me. Happily, we shall meet again. Every parting contains the seed of a new meeting." Here, they took leave of each other. Slowly, with hanging head, the thief departed down a side path that led to the tomb of Torakhon. Khoja Nasreddin rode on. Ahead of him could already be heard the hum and roar of the high road. Half an hour later, it had received him into its turbid, seething torrent. Rasid Dayag Bazari Diga, where chapter 39 is the concluding, which is going to be tomorrow.